Amazing revelation. Black Maid's unexpected plea for $5,000 to save her mother's life leaves billions. Questioning economic justice. Mary Jenkins stood in the gleaming lobby of the Hawthorne law firm, watching as the polished shoes of partners clicked serenely against the marble floor. It was a world of privilege that felt galaxies away from her own rundown apartment, filled with the smell of rehearsed dignity and crisp air fresheners. Every day, Mary cleaned where skyscrapers touched the sky, yet she felt smaller than the dust fluff she brushed away. Today was different. Her mother's health teetered on a sharp knife's edge, with a looming $5,000 treatment casting a shadow over her hope. How could life demand so much? She had spent weeks wrestling with what felt like the impossible dilemma. Should she focus on her mother, or dare to seek help, admitting to her desperate financial state? A pit of fear churned in her stomach, tightening like a noose as she scrutinized each desk she tidied. They all worked so hard, so diligent, without a thought about who cleanly swept the crumbs of their lives away. Ignored, underappreciated, an invisible cog in an oppressive machine. That was her reality. But with her mother fading, perhaps it was time to confront the untouched throbs of her every desire. "Mary, we need your input," her boss had said, waving her over like she was just another piece of furniture. She hesitated, the words prickling at her fingertips, an alarming urgency rising. Was she truly ready to ask for assistance? Did it even matter when rejection formed a steel cord around her heart? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That realization hit her with a jolt. The treatment was so much more than money. It was her mother's survival. Unbeknownst to her boss, her mind raced with warnings of judgment. As she collected papers from the floor, each page felt heavier than lead, as if they held the weight of her unfulfilled aspirations. She was worth more, wasn't she? Then came the day she stumbled upon a dusty box of files. The lawyers had left senseless annotations on her work, but Mary's mind quickened as she absorbed each line, realizing she had a knack for legal analysis. A senior partner's eyes flashed with interest as he wandered past. This was the unraveling of her dilemma. Should she embrace this hidden talent? Was it worth the risk of losing every shred of certainty that kept her grounded? Just then, as if the universe sensed her wavering resolve, a shocking family secret emerged from unseen corners. Amidst her unearthing, emotions crashed together. Descendants from a fraught history of pain and forgotten truths unveiled. How could she choose between pursuing her rights as a new path dawned upon her, or stay tethered to a mother who had sacrificed everything? Everything felt as though it was spiraling at once. Gritting her teeth, she stood at the intersection of hope and despair, her heart hammering against her ribs, an unbearable weight. With every beat, doubts clawed at her. The stakes enveloped her, money, dignity, legacy, coalescing with each fleeting glance at her mother. She had to decide, but could she really brave the unknown? The quest for her future glittered ahead like a mirage, blurring against the backdrop of legacy and love. Mary sat on the edge of her modest bed, worn linens reflecting her inner turmoil. The dim light filtering through the window illuminated the dust particles dancing in the air, and as she stared, it felt as if they were mocking her. Each mote an echo of her dreams, floating just out of reach. The choice looming before her was more than just about the money. It was about self-discovery. Who was she beneath the label of Maid? Was she more than the sum of her struggles? Her mother's fading health was a constant ache, a reminder of her vulnerabilities. She gripped the edge of the bed, nails digging into her palms, squeezing thoughts of self-doubt to the peripheries. What if she ventured into the unknown and failed? Everything around her, the firm, its polished floors, the confidence of its partners, felt so foreign. Yet here lay an opportunity to define her own narrative. Throughout the next week at the firm, every interaction with the lawyers carved deeper into her psyche. Each coffee break became a stage, a chance for her to observe, absorb, and analyze. The more she learned about their cases and arguments, the more a fire ignited within her. She found herself lingering to eavesdrop on their discussions, her heart racing as she envisioned herself contributing rather than just cleaning up. On the fourth day, she collected her courage and approached the senior partner who had noticed her the week before. He sat alone at a conference table, reviewing thick documents that teetered like unwelcome truths. "Excuse me, Mr. Hawkins?" Her voice trembled slightly, but held an earnest edge. He looked up, eyebrows raised. "Yes, Mary?" I've been thinking about the legal work. I see how passionate you all are. I wonder if there's a way I could help. Maybe an internship or training." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly masked by a polite smile. "That's an ambitious thought for someone in your position, but it's not unheard of. What makes you think you can handle it?" The question hung, weighted by the skepticism she subconsciously fed. "I've begun to understand the nuances of legal writing. I may not have formal training, but I'm willing to learn. I just need a chance to prove myself." He paused, scrutinizing her earnestness. "Why now, Mary? What's changed?" Her heart thundered in her chest. She could feel the implications of her words shaping her reality. "My mother's health is in jeopardy. I need more than just this job to make a better life for us. I want to break cycles, both for her and for myself." For a moment, silence hovered. It felt pivotal, monumental. Could this be the turning point? Mary held her breath, waiting for his response. "Give me a few weeks, and let's see what we can do." He finally said, his tone contemplative, yet mildly encouraging. "But this won't be easy. You'll need resilience." Resilience. She had learned that lesson every day, but now it felt like a shrouded truth awakening beneath layers of fear. A spark ignited in her. Perhaps she could inhabit the role she yearned to fulfill. As she walked away from the conference room, her mind raced. She had just dared to rewrite her script. Would she be met with support, or would her ambition crumble under the weight of unrealistic expectations? That evening, she returned to her mother, her heart studded with hope and apprehension. But she couldn't share the details. Not yet. Fear still clung to her. What if she failed? A hollowness echoed inside her, demanding honesty from her reflection. Tomorrow would demand clarity, but tonight she clung to this newfound spark, grappling with the profound realization that her journey had truly begun. The next day would entail more than days of cleaning. It would demand her to confront societal constructs. The moment loomed, and with it, a critical decision awaited. Could she truly navigate the chasm between her existence and her aspirations? Would she embrace this path, or retreat into the shadows of what was expected? The sun broke over the horizon, casting a warm glow through the flimsy curtains of Mary's room. The early morning light was an invitation and a challenge, daring her to embrace the day with purpose. She woke up with a mix of anticipation and trepidation, nerves twisting in her stomach as she prepared for her first day of engaging seriously with the firm's legal culture. As she donned her maid uniform, it felt heavier than before, a weight of her identity that pressed against her shoulders. Today was not just about putting on work clothes. It was about stepping into the role of someone who had agency, someone poised to break free from the confines of familiar expectations. She caught her reflection, and for the first time in a long while, she saw a glimmer of resolve staring back. Arriving at the firm, the polished floors mirrored her mood, shiny yet intimidating. Every step echoed, resonating with the thoughts racing through her mind. Would she truly be able to carve a new path? How would the lawyers perceive her eagerness as they crossed paths during the day? Mary meticulously arranged herself in the pantry, the heart of the firm. Her opportunities for involvement flanked her like unreachable stars overhead, but the moment she caught the end of a legal debate, her heart raced. The attorneys stood animated, engaging with ideas she desperately wanted to be a part of. It felt like catching shadows of ambition darting just out of reach. During lunch, she couldn't resist. She approached a junior associate, Clara, whose insights had captivated her during a meeting. "Hi, Clara. Do you have a minute?" She bit her lip, half expecting the gravity of her request to cause a rift. Clara looked surprised, but nodded. "Of course, Mary. What's on your mind?" I'm interested in the legal discussions that happen here. I want to get involved and learn as much as I can. Do you think there could be room for me to contribute? The younger woman chuckled lightly, disbelief creeping into her expression. As a maid? Mary, that's a tall order. You know these lawyers have years of education and practice. Mary felt her heart plummet. A familiar weight of dismissal washed over her. But I'm willing to put in the effort. I'm resourceful and dedicated. I just need someone to believe in me. The fire in her voice surprised even herself. Looking thoughtful, Clara softened her tone. I'll be honest, it's not typical. But if you're that eager, why not reach out to Mr. Hawkins again? He might be able to guide you. With Clara's suggestion propelling her forward, Mary felt a surge of hope. Maybe she was meant to be here, even in a place so unaccustomed to her presence. If she could just plant seeds of her aspirations within the minds of those around her, they might grow into something tangible. That evening, she crafted an email to Mr. Hawkins. Articulate and earnest, she poured her heart into the words, revealing her desire to learn and become an intern. Would he see her determination, or would he perceive her request as naive? As she pressed send, her mind raced with possibilities. The office would not only witness her presence in the literal sense, she was ready to embody her future self. But shadows lingered. What if her plea fell flat? What if her identity thwarted her ambition? The uncertainty thrummed in the back of her mind, mixing with adrenaline from her daring pursuit. The firm was a labyrinth of expectations, and she was a new player questioning norms, wondering if she could shift definitions of who she could become. In the quiet moments after sending that email, instead of retreating into insecurity, Mary stood firm. Lucky dioramas began to appear in her imagination, where she pictured herself confidently negotiating cases, standing shoulder to shoulder with those she admired. But the question remained. Would Mr. Hawkins be receptive or dismissive once again? As night settled over her, she realized that creating this reality demanded risk. The greater her aspiration, the more vulnerable her heart. That vulnerability could turn to strength. Tomorrow would reveal whether her persistence would bring opportunity or injury. With a deep breath, she faced the unknown that awaited her. It was clearer than ever. It was time for her to embrace the challenge of being seen. Would she dare to challenge the very foundations of her identity? And would the firm embrace her resolve? Morning arrived with a weighty silence that contrasted sharply with Mary's racing thoughts. A relentless rhythm of expectancy drummed at her consciousness as she prepared to face yet another day at the firm. Each moment felt like a frame in a film she could not direct. She barely tasted her breakfast, her mind replaying the weight of her email to Mr. Hawkins, the stakes painfully clear. This was not just about opportunity, it was about redefining her existence. As she stepped into the office, the pre-dawn stillness seemed to cling to her like a shroud. Her palms brushed against the cool surfaces of the large filing cabinets, grounding her. Today, she resolved to approach her coworkers differently. She no longer wanted to linger in the periphery. Her intention was to become part of the conversations, to nurture the aspiration that had budded within her. Mary found herself instinctively gravitating toward the conference room, where a team gathered for an important strategy meeting. The heavy oak door bore witness to debates that unfolded behind it, discussions that were heavy with intellect yet devoid of her voice. Through the tinted glass, she could see animated gestures and intense expressions. Fragments of legal jargon wafted through the cracks, yet she felt they were spoken in a language far removed from her understanding. What would they think if she just walked in? The thought ignited a spark of rebellious courage within her. Before her insecurities could mount a counterattack, she drew a breath and entered. The immediate silence that enveloped her felt like a roar that belonged to a different world. She noted the surprised faces shifting toward her, attorneys who embodied the very standard of professional success she aspired to. Can I join you for a moment?" she ventured, her voice trembling yet firm. All eyes landed on her, and for a moment, no one spoke. Mr. Hawkins broke the silence, his brows furrowing in contemplation. "This isn't really—" "It's about your strategy for the Mitchell case, isn't it?" she interjected, her heart pounding. "I overheard part of the conversation in the pantry, and I believe I can help." A skeptical glance passed between the associates, but the challenge in her eyes pulled at their attention. She had taken a step, even if her footing felt precarious. "You're not an attorney, Mary," Clara spoke, cautiously supporting her. "But if you have insights—" "I have researched the industry for years," Mary asserted, surprising herself with the strength of her words. "I may not have formal training, but I have perspective, something that could add value." For a brief moment, the silence continued. Then Mr. Hawkins nodded gradually, as though weighing her resolve in his mind. "Very well, then. Share your thoughts. What do you know about the case?" As she began to articulate her ideas, fully aware of the novice nature of her contributions, she felt the gradual creak of wheels turning in the minds around her. One by one, the attorneys shifted closer, their interest igniting a warmth inside her. She could see varied postures, the sharp edges of their skepticism softening as they listened. The engagement stretched beyond her preset limitations, with each comment sharpening her clarity and resolve. She had opened a door, and with it, an invitation to redefine how they perceived her, not merely as a maid, but as a budding intellectual. After her thoughts were shared, Mr. Hawkins leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression etched on his face. "Thank you, Mary. Your perspective was unexpected yet intriguing. We'll consider your insights moving forward." As she exited the room, exhilaration battled with disbelief within her. Had she really done that? Each step away from the conference room felt less heavy, more buoyant. When she reached her station, she caught a glimpse of herself reflected in the glass door of the office. The image of a woman transformed stared back, brimming with potential, but lurking beneath the excitement was the gnawing fear of what her next move would be. Would Mr. Hawkins share her contributions with others? More troubling, would she find the strength to keep pushing beyond the boundaries that had always defined her? She sat down with her thoughts swirling, recognizing the stark reality of her evolving role within this world. The weight of her aspiration felt both exhilarating and burdensome. She had taken a leap, but the distance she had to travel felt as far away as the stars. With a deep breath, Mary braced herself for the intertwining paths of opportunity and rejection. For the first time, that duality compelled her forward, fueled by an urgency she was only beginning to understand. Time would tell if her bravery would yield growth, but one certainty lay ahead. This was not the last time she would confront her worth at the firm. What were the limits of her ambition? In the coming days, she would find out. The morning sun poured in through the blinds, illuminating Mary's workspace with a flickering warmth that contrasted sharply with the churning thoughts in her mind. The exhilaration from her earlier boldness still coursed through her veins, yet it was tinged with anxiety. She had stepped into a new realm of professional identity, but would it be enough to withstand the challenges ahead? Her colleagues buzzed around her, engaged in mundane tasks that now seemed trivial compared to the depth of her recent experience. Was it truly possible for her to transition from being invisible to a person of significance in the firm? Each exchange felt like a litmus test for her resolve. Every glance from her co-workers became charged with implications she was just beginning to unpack. Mary opened her email, grimacing at the sight of her inbox filled with routine messages. She took a breath, reminding herself that she needed to act. Being passive would not serve her newly arisen purpose. She could not return to the shadows. Spurred on by the vague promise of validation she had felt when she spoke earlier, Mary formulated a plan. It was time to seek more tangible opportunities to showcase her insights. With determination hardening her resolve, she approached her supervisor, Clara, who was hunched over papers at her desk. "Could we discuss the meeting about the Mitchell case? I have more ideas I'd like to contribute," she suggested, her voice steadier than before. Clara looked up, surprise etched across her features. "You want to discuss the case further? I didn't expect that from you. I appreciate your initiative, but remember your role here." The kindly tone disarmed Mary, but it also ignited her frustration. "I understand that. I'm still a maid, but I have valuable perspectives, especially since I've been keenly observing the legal climate outside. I thought my research could be put to better use." As she spoke, her pulse quickened, the sense of worth she desperately craved pulsing just out of reach. A flicker of intrigue crossed Clara's face as she hesitated. "Very well then. I'll arrange for you to sit in on preliminary discussions about the strategy. You might not have formal training, but the right instincts can take you far too." Mary felt a surge of relief as she left her supervisor's office, exhilaration swirling again within her. It was not merely an opportunity. It was yet another affirmation that she belonged. The acknowledgement reshaped her confidence in ways she hadn't thought possible. As the day progressed, however, that burgeoning confidence began to fray around the edges. Rumors of the Mitchell case floated through the hall. Whispers of challenges that could jeopardize the firm's standing created an undercurrent of stress. With the stakes visibly higher now, another rush of fear pierced through her. Could she truly make an impact in such decisive moments? With each passing hour, Mary found herself staring blankly at her computer screen, unable to focus. In her mind lurked doubt tremors. Would the attorneys really value her input? If she stumbled, would she invalidate the small progress she had achieved? The pressure felt like a tightrope walk, and for the first time, she questioned if her contributions would be met with open ears or be drowned out by established authority. And then it hit her. This was no longer about proving something to others. It was about proving to herself that she could rise to this occasion. Quieting the inner tumult, she pondered how to further develop her voice. She had entered the conference room once. Perhaps there were other opportunities to gather insights and amplify her presence further. With clarity emerging like a dawn, Mary found her next steps unfolding. She would prepare a detailed analysis, drawing from her research on the case and familiarizing herself with the latest legal precedents. Not only would this equip her to contribute effectively, but it would solidify her place as a meaningful asset. A sudden pulse of excitement coursed through her veins. This week would be transformative. She could feel its potential. At that moment, the surrounding silence felt like a cocoon ready to burst open into something extraordinary. But as her determination solidified, so too did the unshakable realization that the road ahead would not be smooth. What awaited her in the next discussion could be a revelation of her hidden strengths, or a test of her resolve like never before. In the recesses of her mind, she felt a familiar gnawing. The potential for success mingled dangerously with the fear of failure. As she steeled herself for what lay ahead, she sensed the impending challenge would push her further than she had ever dared to go. Would she rise to the occasion, or would the weight of her aspirations bring her crashing back? The sterile brightness of the conference room felt oddly overwhelming. Mary stood at the edge of the long table, armed with her carefully constructed analysis, but the weight of expectation bore down on her shoulders with a new intensity. The hum of conversation around her faded into a distant drone, even as she tried to focus on the task at hand. Clara had welcomed her into this deliberative space, and in doing so, had elevated her past the threshold of anonymity she had lived in for years. As the team began to settle down, the tension in the air thickened. The lead attorney, Greg, was momentarily lost in his notes, oblivious to the fire igniting within Mary. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that this was her moment, a chance to channel the knowledge she'd painstakingly amassed. If only she could harness that feeling of exhilaration, she might harness the collective gaze of her peers, if only for a moment. The discussions unfolded, and with each round of expert opinions, Mary noted the dominant voices, analyzing their arguments with critical precision. The stakes were astronomical. What hung in the balance was not merely the firm's reputation, but perhaps their clients' futures as well. With every contribution from her colleagues, the doubt within her crept closer to the surface, whispering, "What do you truly know?" And yet, it was that very doubt that began to feel familiar. It echoed the uncertainties she had fought through in her journey thus far. She envisioned her journey as a staircase, each step taken against the fears she battled. Even as her internal dialogue wrestled between crippling doubt and firm resolve, the steady rhythm of her heart urged her to take action. Finally, when the meeting reached an intermission, Greg turned to Mary. "Do you have anything to contribute, Mary? You've been quiet." The spotlight was suddenly on her, the room's energy shifting with expectations that were both unsettling and energizing. The collective gaze of her colleagues waited in silence, and her heart raced. She clenched her notes, steadying herself, and in that moment, something snapped. She stood tall, peeling away the layers of uncertainty that clung to her. "I believe," she began, her voice steady, "that we need to consider the evolving dynamics of the market." Her words flowed with an ease she didn't know she possessed. "The public sentiment is against large corporations right now, making it essential for us to not only defend our clients, but to also align with social perceptions where possible." She gathered momentum, revealing points that originated in her research, each assertion buttressed with data. As she spoke, glances of surprise wove through her colleagues. An undercurrent of respect began to develop in the room, and for the first time, Mary felt the thrill of being heard. She was no longer just the maid. She was an advocate for change, a strategist with insights that directly pertained to the case. When she finished, the room buzzed with conversation. Clara smiled, a warmth that broke through the tension, signaling acceptance and gratitude. Greg looked thoughtful and nodded. "Interesting points. We'll need to explore this direction further." Yet, as the meeting continued, the thrill of validation began to dissolve back into uncertainty. Had she merely scratched the surface, or was this a genuine turning point? The original exhilaration faded into a sequence of anxious thoughts that spiraled deeper as the discussions turned back to traditional legal strategies, leaving her voice a distant echo. What if her contributions were dismissed, lost among the noise of experienced attorneys? The sense of accomplishment she had savored moments ago was replaced by a creeping doubt, heavy in her stomach. As the meeting drew to a close, Mary glanced around, searching for confirmation in her colleagues' faces. A feeling settled in her. Was she merely riding the coattails of their discourse? She had stepped into the arena, but would she retreat? The specter of fear loomed larger than before, thickening her resolve for the next battle. As she left the conference room, her mind turned toward her next move. She needed to stay ahead of the curve. The Mitchell case was just the beginning. Would she develop a plan to build meaningful alliances and cultivate more influence? Amidst the uncertainty, one question reverberated in her mind. Would she seize control of her narrative, or allow herself to drift back into obscurity, defined by others' expectations? And then, almost instinctively, she knew the time had come to choose who she wanted to be. But as she stood on that precipice of self-definition, shadows of doubt entwined with aspirations left her teetering, pushing her toward a confrontation with herself that would determine the course of her journey. Would she push through or pull back? Mary stepped out of the conference room. The sudden shift from intense scrutiny to the hum of fluorescent lights outside felt surreal. The adrenaline that had fueled her during the discussion dissipated, leaving behind a bitter residue of self-doubt. Inhaling deeply, she felt the push-pull of her emotions, conflicting yet entirely revealing. With each step toward her desk, she weighed the discussions that had unfolded, her thoughts a swirling storm of potential and peril. While her confidence had seemed momentarily solid, a gnawing fear whispered that it would crumble at the first sign of weakness. She paused at her workstation, scanning the files sprawled across her desk, each representing cases that had once felt insurmountable, ones that now flickered with the possibility of her involvement. But straying into the realm of daring was daunting. Would she lose the respect she had just begun to cultivate? Casting her eyes toward Clara's office, she noticed the partner deep in conversation, her gestures animated yet controlled. Was this the moment Mary needed to replicate? Making her voice heard amid the command of authority. The specter of her own past loomed large. There were too many moments where consequences of speaking up had felt catastrophic. She couldn't afford to shrink again. Resolute now, Mary retrieved one of the files from her desk, an analysis she had nearly discarded. Flipping it open ignited her earlier spark. Her research suggested that their current legal strategy was steeped in old paradigms, ripe for disruption. But that belief felt dangerously close to delusion, and doubt began creeping back in. Perhaps she would only humiliate herself before the very colleagues she had just begun to impress. Yet a blinding desire for growth surged within her, flooding her with possibilities. She had tasted advocacy. She could not turn back. Gritting her teeth, she gathered the array of documents, energized by a vivid image of active contribution rather than passive observation. Setting her jaw firmly, Mary walked into Clara's office, interrupting the pair mid-discussion. Clara's eyes flicked to her, a mix of surprise and curiosity. "Mary, didn't expect to see you," she remarked, and her tone was warm, inviting. "I've been reflecting on the meeting," Mary began, her voice thicker with firmness. "I believe we need to pivot our strategy for the Mitchell case. I have ideas that could align with the public sentiment that's shifting away from corporate interests. Can we discuss them?" Clara nodded, a spark igniting in her eyes. "Of course, let's hear them." Sitting across from Clara, Mary laid out her revised analysis. As she spoke, her confidence surfaced with undeniable vivacity. Each argument was laced with data, refined ideas interconnected like a woven tapestry only she knew how to create. Clara's engagement grew palpable, sparking a discussion that felt electric. Mid-listening, Clara paused, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "You've really delved into this. Why haven't I heard these points before?" A tangible shiver of vulnerability crept into Mary's bones. "I thought my voice didn't really matter among, well, everyone," she stammered hesitantly. "Your voice is crucial. Don't doubt your contribution again," Clara snapped, her voice sharp but encouraging, then softened. "We need fresh perspectives." For the first time, Mary saw a glimmer of her own potential reflected in Clara's words, the foundations of her self-doubt shaking under the tremor of the unexpected affirmation. But as the conversation flowed, igniting her will to remain engaged, the inquiry arose. Was this what she truly wanted? To forge a path in a world riddled with imposing hierarchies and expectations? Or was she simply a novice on a fragile verge of exposure again? As the discussion deepened, Mary recognized the sheer weight of her choice, and the question loomed large. Would she step forward and define her presence in a space that historically marginalized her, or retreat into the familiar confines of silence, letting the moment escape like so many others? In the electric air of Clara's office, she felt the electrifying spark of necessity. The leap of belief had to come soon. It was emerging to be either the catalyst or the conclusion of her journey until now. Seeing Clara smile as she continued to weave her thoughts, Mary breathed deeply. This was not just about the firm's future. It was about her own emergent narrative. Would she rise to the challenge and face the uncertainty head-on, knowing the potential for failure loomed just as large as success? As her resolve crystallized, a question thrummed through her mind like an electric current. What would she discover about herself in this dance of ambition and fear? Mary emerged from Clara's office, a renewed sense of purpose propelling her step. The initial tremors of insecurity that had plagued her moments before were dissipating, replaced by the thrill of assertion. She had shared her insights, and the reaction had been unexpectedly supportive. Still, as she returned to her desk, the thrill mingled uneasily with a whirlpool of thoughts about the path ahead. Sitting in front of her computer, the energy of Clara's endorsement still buzzing in her veins, she felt a weight settle back onto her shoulders, the weight of uncertainty. What would happen next? The strategies she proposed were audacious, and although Clara had embraced them, the firm was notoriously conservative. Would those in leadership truly accept the fresh approach, or would they dismiss her recommendations as reckless? As she began typing up her notes and refining the analysis for her upcoming presentation, Mary faced an uncomfortable realization. The spark of confidence that Clara ignited could flicker out in an instant if met with resistance. The thought of public opposition was paralyzing. Yet she knew she had to prepare for every possible reaction. She spent hours revisiting the data underpinning her proposals, combing through past case studies that mirrored the conditions of the Mitchell case. With each statistic she analyzed, Mary found herself drawn deeper into the nuances of her argument. The essence of her strategy, it was not just about shifting opinions outward, but also constructing a narrative that empowered her. Each piece of evidence she gathered became a testament to her growth. Word spread quickly around the firm about her breakthrough ideas, setting the stage for her first official presentation. Colleagues began approaching her, curious about her insights. Mary found herself in discussions that were no longer relegated to the periphery, but at the forefront of daily conversations. With each exchange, she applied new layers to her views, modifying them based on feedback without losing the core of her vision. But with that exposure came a lurking anxiety. Would they appreciate her contributions, or see her as a newcomer trying to usurp established practices? The same questions haunted her daily. Did she truly belong here? The walls of her confidence began to shake once again. On the day of her presentation, Mary stood before the revered board of partners. Clara's presence by her side provided a reassuring buffer, yet a knot twisted in her stomach. She had rehearsed countless times, transformed her notes into a cohesive story, yet faced the audience with her heart hammering in her chest. Would they hear her, or were they prepared to dismiss her based on their biases? As she spoke, adhering to a careful rhythm of assertive delivery, balanced with measured humility, she watched their faces for feedback. Clara maintained a vigilant air of encouragement, nodding slightly as Mary touched on key points. Halfway through, an unexpected question came from Jonathan, a senior partner known for his challenging demeanor. What makes you think a change in strategy will realign public sentiments when our clients have always prioritized growth over perception? The challenge hung in the air, heavy with potential ramifications. In that moment, doubt clawed at her ideals. But Mary drew on the many conversations she had absorbed since the initial pitch. Her voice steadied, responding with clarity. It's precisely that perception that is shifting. For the first time, the public is prioritizing values over profits. Understanding that change is critical to not just our clients, but to our future viability as a firm. The air crackled with tension as she completed her answer. It seemed as if the room held its breath, partners exchanging glances, weighing her proposition against their long-held beliefs. As Mary concluded her presentation, clearing the air of uncertainty with a sense of completion, she caught Clara's approving smile out of the corner of her eye, a gesture that sparked a flicker of hope. The waiting game began, and her heart raced with anticipation and dread. Could she maintain the momentum? Would she be able to stand firm against the tide, even if the current carried her toward uncertainty? Just as Clara began to speak, preparing to advocate for her, an unexpected voice echoed from the back of the room. One she hadn't anticipated, one that could alter her trajectory completely. You really think you can turn our centuries-old methods on their head based on feelings? Mary paused, the weight of that question heavy, her reality shifting once more. She wasn't just defending her strategy now, She was confronting a legacy steeped in tradition. What choice would she make in the face of this challenge? The moment had arrived. Mary's heartbeat was a steady drumming in her ears, drowning out the murmurs swirling around the boardroom. Jonathan's query echoed, a relentless prompt demanding a response that would set the course not only for her proposal, but for her identity within the firm. The aura of grand ambition she had cultivated felt so fragile now, as if a single harsh word could shatter it. She took a breath, steadying herself against the imminent tide of doubt. In this fragile moment, she glimpsed an opportunity, not merely to defend her position, but to redefine her relationship with the firm. This could be her moment of transformation, ushering her from an uncertain newcomer into a recognized authority. Change isn't rooted merely in feelings, she began, voice unwavering. It's in the data we see in front of us. The case studies I've explored show a clear trend. Companies that adapt their messaging to reflect societal values not only survive, but thrive. Our clients are wary of being perceived as out of touch. By prioritizing values alongside profits, we can create a narrative that not only resonates, but elevates their brands. With each word, the initial vulnerability was replaced by conviction. She could feel the partners sharpening their focus, their expressions a melange of skepticism and intrigue. Mary leaned into her argument, illustrating with examples, charting the progression of market shifts, predicting consumer behavior with precision. But Jonathan wasn't finished. Leaning forward, he interjected with renewed vigor. What if your data proves to be just a passing trend? Are we really willing to alter a legacy built on success? Frustration bubbled within her. Old guard versus new vision. This was a trial, and as much as she felt the challenge to her proposals was personal, she understood it was about more than just her ideas. The very fabric of the firm was at stake. If we don't adapt, we risk becoming irrelevant. The marketplace is evolving at an unprecedented pace. It's not change we should fear. It's the lack of it. The energy in the room shifted as she spoke, the undercurrent of sincerity and urgency cutting through Jonathan's defense. Clara leaned in, her presence a steady anchor. Mary sensed her support and found strength from it. This battle wasn't just hers. It was a collective struggle for relevance. Yet as she heralded her case, looming insecurities tightened like a noose around her confidence. While she had prepared extensively, the depth of analytical knowledge was only part of the equation. This was a matter of heart, too. Would they believe in her vision enough to carry it forward? Tension coiled around the room like a tightening spring. Mary continued to expound on the importance of integrating progressive strategies without dismissing core values. Each statistic, each example transformed into a clarion call. She articulated the potential for the firm to lead not just in profits, but in social responsibility. At the close of her argument, silence enveloped the room. It was a charged equilibrium that felt like a tide poised for change. Clara opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, a voice cut through, one that carried with it a weight of authority. You're right. We must remain relevant. But can we trust a fresh perspective to uphold our values? It was Margaret, a fierce advocate for tradition who now put Mary squarely in the firing line. Mary swallowed hard, feeling the room's attention shift to her. This was the moment. Would she crumble under pressure, or would she rise to meet it? Her answer would define her future in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. Yes, we can trust it, if we choose to listen to voices beyond our own. As the room erupted into conversation, some dismissive, others curious, Mary felt the road ahead unfurl before her. She had ignited a dialogue, but would it grow into a movement, or would the roots of tradition stifle its potential? A thought struck her, potent and invigorating. The moment had come to challenge not only the corporate norms, but herself. What kind of leader did she want to become amidst this struggle? This wasn't just about strategy anymore. It was about confronting the legacy of fear and hesitation. Would she step forward boldly into the light of uncertainty, or retreat back into the shadow of her doubts? As decisions loomed, Clarity began to form in her mind, drawing her toward action that would forever alter her trajectory. Now it was time to choose her next step, and Mary knew this was just the beginning of a far longer journey. The stakes had been set, and with them, her resolve crystallized into a singular truth. The legacy she aimed to reshape might ultimately redefine her. In the back of her mind, one question lingered. Would she move boldly toward the horizon of possibilities, or remain shackled to the expectations of the past? Mary Jenkins stood in the conference room, flushed with an adrenaline rush, her heart racing as conversation sprung to life around her following her intense pitch. It was no longer about simply seeking recognition. It was about forging her own path, establishing herself as a titan of transformation against the backdrop of a conservative legacy. The apprehension that had weighed heavily on her was replaced by a growing conviction, a profound realization that she had the power to influence not just her future, but the very fabric of the firm as well. Days turned into weeks, and Mary's presence at the firm transcended her previous role. No longer just the maid slipping through polished corridors, she became a vital contributor to discussions and strategies that shaped client outcomes. Her passion for legal analysis blossomed. Her insights, once shrouded in doubt, grew sharper with each presentation. Paradoxically, the greater the challenge she faced, the more resolute she became, each hurdle morphing into an opportunity for growth. The pivotal moment came weeks later, during a critical firm meeting intended to evaluate the efficacy of their newly adopted strategies. Mary, full of anticipation, presented a meticulously curated report analyzing their recent wins and losses based on the shifts she had passionately advocated for. She opened with a bold statement, reflecting the confidence she had cultivated. Our journey toward resonating with current societal values has proven successful, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. Applause from her colleagues punctured the skepticism that once surrounded her, each clap validating her transformation from invisible to influential. Joy surged within her, anchoring her conviction that she had not just found a voice, but an unwavering presence important enough to be heard. The realization of her competence filled her with a sense of accomplishment so profound that she could barely contain the smile spreading across her face. Feedback met her efforts like supportive waves, reshaping doubt into empowerment. Senior members, those who had once questioned her place, now recognized her as an indispensable resource. "Mary," Clara began, a proud glimmer in her eyes, "your contributions have not only reaffirmed our strategies but have also enriched our culture. It's refreshing to see someone willing to challenge our norms." Tears welled up, but she held them at bay. What she had once sought, acceptance and appreciation, was not just granted. It came with an acknowledgement of genuine respect. Mary smiled, understanding her immense growth. On a sun-drenched afternoon, she received an email inviting her to join a special task force aimed at rebranding the firm's image to reflect progressive values. Each email felt like an additional thread, weaving her success into the quilt of her ambition. They sought her insight because she had transformed daunting trials into marketable strategies, an honor she never imagined would be hers. "Congratulations, Mary. This is monumental. Honestly, I couldn't envision anyone more deserving," Mr. Hawkins remarked, his tone filled with warmth, validating not just her hard work, but also her evolution. All the thoughts of uncertainty that clouded her mind just months ago dissipated, replaced by a solid sense of self. She was respected. She was competent. She had conquered her doubts and emerged not only intact, but thriving. The ratchet of her circumstances, from maid to reputable strategist, revealed a transformation no one could have foreseen, especially not herself. Later that evening, she sat across from her mother, a woman who had carried the burden of their struggles with unyielding grace. Now, with renewed vigor, Mary shared her triumphs, her experiences resonating deeply. The weight of legacy had shifted. She was not just fighting for survival, but for a brighter, more dignified future. "I'm proud of you, Mary," her mother whispered, tears shimmering in her eyes, reflecting an amalgamation of pride and love. You've become more than I ever imagined possible." Mary nodded, her heart swelling with fulfillment. She had learned to navigate the spaces between identities, forging a path that was uniquely her own. "I can't stop now, Mom. This is just the beginning." A comforting realization washed over her. She had achieved the very thing she once thought was out of her reach, a defined identity grounded in her worth, a career that recognized her talents, and a legacy of her own making. As Mary reflected on her journey, she recognized that she had not just changed her life, she had altered the course of her family's narrative. In her venture from invisibility to visibility, from maid to strategist, she didn't merely redefine her own destiny. She claimed her place in the world of law as a force for change. And just like that, her transformation solidified into an unwavering truth. She had achieved not only her professional aspirations, but a profound personal victory, demonstrating resilience that would inspire countless others to seek the essence of their own potential. Now was the moment to build upon that truth further. She would carry her story into new realms of possibility. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will resonate deeply. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment below to share your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion.